folklore, ghosts, cryptids, and a whole lot of Atlantic charm. Today I'm joined by Evan and Chelsea, the voices behind It Came from the Maritimes. We're diving into the stories that shaped their podcast, how TikTok and local legends fuel their episodes, and why the Maritimes might just be one of Canada's most haunted regions. Good evening, and welcome back to ParaGhoul Paranormal Discoveries from the Dark. I'm your host, K.D. Culpa, a horror author and paranormal researcher based in Regina, Saskatchewan. Each week on the podcast, we dive into the shadows of Saskatchewan's past and even go beyond, uncovering dark history, mysteries, urban legends, and sometimes we even get to some monsters. If you're one of the listeners that comes back each week but aren't yet subscribed, please hit that follow button and share it with someone who loves the weird and wonderful. I've got more big guests and haunted deep dives coming your way, so join me now as we explore the unknown and bring life to the ghosts and monsters hiding in the dark. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank
Thank you for
you. We're
having us.
excited to be here.
Yeah, I'll let you guys introduce yourself. I know, of course, I know who you are, but I'll let you guys introduce yourself to our listeners, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I'm Evan, and this is Chelsea, and we are, I guess, hosts of our own podcast. It came from the Maritimes, where we share Atlantic Canadian folklore. So a lot of things like ghost stories, monster stories, just kind of general mysteries, and then some things that maybe aren't even that mysterious, but we just find kind of interesting.
Do
Yeah,
you want to add anything, Chelsea?
Yeah. So we're a brother and sister, and we're born and raised in Nova Scotia. So hence our passion for the Atlantic Canada folklore side of things. Yeah, we
Awesome.
started this podcast just over, well, I guess about a year and a half ago now. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I was looking at it looks like you have kind of two streams of your podcast episodes, right? You have the minis and then is it the full podcast episodes?
Yeah, so we started every second week with our full episodes. And then we noticed that we had a lot of ones where it was like, this is going to take us like a couple of minutes to chat about, but we still want to, and rather than just cram a bunch of those into one episode and make it a little bit more confusing, we kind of just spread them out and kind of do a long one then a short one, so then it's kind of, there's always something there.
Yeah, that's very cool. I guess how do you come up with like which ones to talk about each week? Because I know I've noticed we overlapped on a couple, but you guys have way more on the in the Maritimes region than I do, obviously because I do mostly Western Canada, but
Yeah.
Yeah. So we, a lot of it, I think our first few episodes were stories that we had become familiar with over the years just from hearing them. For example, the first story I ever covered was something I heard at a campfire when I was a kid. So a lot of the earlier episodes we did were just old Nova Scotian tales that we had known for years. But as time's gone on, pretty much any book on Atlantic Canada, mysteries, folklore, even just history in general, I find, and Evan as well, we just scoop them up so that we can familiarize ourselves with all these kind of lesser known stories. And we've gotten a lot of episode recommendations and topic recommendations just from attending local like craft markets and chatting about folklore with folks. Yeah, and getting ideas from them.
that's a cool idea to do. I've never tried that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
And I'll
it's
say,
been really
like,
cool.
yeah. I know I recently especially have just been going to a lot of used bookstores, and I've been pretty lucky pretty lucky in what I find. And sometimes it's just like oh, this is a book that has some ghost stories from the Maritimes or something. And it's like, okay. But sometimes you find something just very, very specific that just really delves into one topic. Like you can find probably hundreds of books about Oak Island or things like that, but you can find like one book about how the Freemasons have an influence on Oak Island or something like that.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, but it really kind of depends. I know right now my living room floor has probably about 25 different books spread around, and my wife probably isn't the happiest with that, but she's tolerating it because I told her that when we were when we record a couple more episodes in a couple of days, we'll have them cleared up.
That's too funny. I know my husband doesn't like sometimes gets dragged along to these places for me to investigate and like go learn the history, and he's good with it as long as nothing weird happens. But if something weird happens, he goes, "I think you need to hire someone to do these with you."
Yeah, I've dragged. So my husband, he records and edits our podcast for us, Jeff, and all in the summer we do a lot of camping, and I'll plan a camping trip for like the south shore of Nova Scotia. And his first question is always, "Where are you dragging me to today?" Like last year, I planned a camping trip on the south shore so we could visit Shag Harbor, and which I know you did an episode on.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it
that's
was
very
really
cool.
cool.
I'll be honest, sometimes I think I'm just going to hang out with Chelsea and I'm getting dragged along on something that I didn't even know about, so it's kind of a she's influential in a way.
I am. And it's fun because I I'm still learning. I feel like there's so many places in the Maritimes that have a spooky history that we don't even know about. But often, just because I've read like dozens and dozens of books on these topics, I know like almost everywhere we go, I know at least one or two spots that do have that history. So, for example, if it's a place that I want to do an episode on in the upcoming future that's appropriate to take photos at, I'll send Evan a text. Wear something nice. We might be making podcast content today.
Oh, well, there you go.
Good way
Yeah,
to
I
do
will
it.
say sometimes the photo taking doesn't feel great. We did an episode about haunted universities, and one day I was standing outside of the dorm at Dalhousie University waiting for there to be no students around so I could take pictures, and I was like, this is the police are going to be called on me one of these days. I was like,
Just
I
kind of
don't want
looking like
it.
you're lurking.
Well, that's the thing is like, and I was waiting until people weren't around because I didn't want people be in it, but yeah, it didn't feel good.
I feel like all of us that are in this industry or kind of stream though has those moments because even last night we're starting a ghost tour here in Regina, and so I went with my co-guide, and we're like, we should get some photos done. So then we started going around to some places, and I was like, I sure hope they don't have cameras to the outside, seeing us like wandering around their building, probably going, what are these people doing?
That's fair. That's fair.
I am curious though, since you're a sister and brother team, like I have an older brother, and he has loves ghost stories just like I do, probably from growing up in a haunted house. But I'm curious how you guys decided to come together to do the podcast because I don't think I'd ever be able to get my brother to do it.
So it was Evan's idea originally, and I was super excited when he brought it up. So, Evan, do you want to talk about kind of your inspiration?
Yeah. Honestly, with that, I'd say when it comes to the stuff we talk about, I know Chelsea's definitely a lot heavier on the ghost side of things and the spookier side of things. She's a big horror movie fan, stuff like that. Whereas I find I sway a bit more towards just like weird creatures and weird mysteries that you find. With that being said, I think we both like all of the stuff, just kind of how things go. But with that, I know Chelsea was kind of always a lot more into that as a kid, whereas I was terrified. I was the kid who always had like a nightlight on, and I I had a mirror in my room that I would cover at night because Chelsea told me about Bloody Mary. Um, but yeah, we it was just kind of an idea that came into my head, and at first it was just kind of there, and I was like, honestly, I'm reading all these weird stories, and I was basically doing dramatic readings of them to my my wife, my girlfriend at the time, of all these folklore stories. And then I was like, you know who else loves these types of things? Chelsea. So I kind of brought it to her, and I think she's doing the same thing to her husband, Jeff. So it just kind of made sense. It gives us a little outlet. I mean, Jeff's recording us, so he does need to listen to them anyways, but. And we found
Still a
a.
part of it.
Exactly, but we found a community online here who's also interested, so it's great to just kind of have a place to put these stories out and share them, and we have some people come back and kind of tell us their own stories because of that.
Yeah. And I know I was really excited when Evan brought up the idea because I'm in a more like scientific career, so I haven't necessarily flexed those like creative skills in a while, but I always loved writing and it was something I was always interested in, but it just was on the back burner for years. So this has been a great opportunity just to like as we're researching these episodes, write our scripts and just yeah, have a creative outlet and a subject I'm very passionate about.
Well, and it's a different subject. I think that's what I love about it is you aren't going to necessarily hear these things, at the office.
Yeah.
Like these are something different completely.
I mean, you say that, but I'd say I've probably had a solid 2 or 3 episodes that have come about because someone at my office has come up to me and been like, "Hey, have you heard of this?"
That's nice.
Yeah, in particular, one woman at my office, I'd say she's a big supporter, and one of the recent ones we did, Mother Koo, who's a woman who predicted some of the Nova Scotia mine disasters, was like kind of a fortune teller. I only
Okay.
learned about her because I got a text one day with just like a picture of a book where she was reading about this woman.
Well, that's very cool. So they're kind of helping you come up with the content, which is always nice.
Yeah, I think they're just like, oh, you'd be interested in this, and it's like, you know what, I am.
Oh, I definitely find that too with the ghost stories. People always have a ghost story, but they don't necessarily want to talk about it until they know that you are into ghost stories too. Because, yeah, I get that. I do get that sometimes at work. Someone will want to be like, oh, we should talk sometime. I have a story you might find interesting.
It's so true. I find just at these local markets we've attended to promote the podcast and collect some listener stories. It's amazing because so Evan created these fun signs that just say, "Tell me your ghost stories, tell me your cryptid sightings." So it's just kind of a conversation starter. But people will come by and they're like, "Oh, I don't have a ghost story, but when I was a kid, my friend and I saw a gargoyle come to life in my neighbor's backyard." And we're
Oh,
like,
weird.
"Well, that sounds kind of like a ghostish or like a paranormal story at the very least." So
Yeah,
I
something
do find
different.
right? So many people have these tales and they just don't necessarily share them all the time. So it is nice when they open up.
Yeah, for sure. I guess do you guys each have like a favorite story that you've covered so far, or one that you're hoping to cover soon?
Yeah. I think my favorite story, and this is the one that I kind of the first Nova Scotia ghost story I heard, is the story of Ivy, one of the ghosts at the White Point Beach Resort in Nova Scotia. And
Okay.
this one's Evan and I have a fun, or I consider it a fun history with it. So at White Point Beach, when we were kids, we'd go with our mom for about a week each summer, and they would do these island campouts in the middle of the week that parents could sign their kids up at. So I feel like now parents would not send their kids to an island in a lake with 2 15-year-olds chaperoning, but at the time it was like very common. But there was one year that it was just me and Evan. We were the only 2 kids that got signed up. And the counselors asked us if we had ever heard the story of Ivy at White Point Beach, and we hadn't. In hindsight, I think Evan was 8, I was 10, like around those ages. And they start telling us the story of the ghost of the former owner who haunted the dining hall and would play piano in the middle of the night. So
Oh,
I was captivated by this story. I was so excited. And then I wake up in the middle of the night and one of the counselors is canoeing Evan back to shore because he was just he was not having it. But I love that story. And then as an adult, like I loved it so much that I wrote about it for school projects. I just I found it so fascinating. I think at some point I ended up blurring the story of Ivy with the plot line from the Corpse Bride movie in my head, so I thought she was murdered for her riches. That was not actually true, but I shared the real story in our second ever podcast episode.
That's too funny. Well, it's always fun though when it's like a personal kind of connection to the story, I find.
Yeah.
For sure. Evan, what about you? Do you have a favorite?
Um, it's hard to choose. I'd say one of my favorites would be it's kind of a is it a ghost story? Is it more of like a boogeyman monster type of story? But there's an area in Nova Scotia called Dagger Woods, and there's a ghost or a monster called the Hinder. And it was apparently like some guy who went on a spree with a pearl handled dagger. But now he's kind of transformed. He either died and came back as a ghost or is some sort of monster. And with that, apparently, if you're in these woods, you'll hear these shrieks, but you'll never be able to fully see this being because it's always behind you. And then if you try to turn around, then it's always behind you again. But you just know that the shrieks get louder and louder and louder, and then eventually it gets you. And there's some great stories around that. I think there's even a song by the Stanfields about it.
Mhm.
Um, and apparently, the one story of someone who's beaten it is that they saw the reflection of the thing in a puddle, and that was the way that you could kind of scare it away because it was finally seen. Yeah, that's kind of the
Oh.
one that's in my mind from recent memory.
I know that's going to be our next podcast road trip. I'm going to ask Evan if he wants to go for a drive, and we'll be going to the Dagger Woods.
Just make sure you take a mirror, I guess.
I'm prepared.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's really cool. Well, and so you don't always do just ghost stories too, though, you said you sometimes do. Well, I think I just heard you talking about like milk that could curdle during a storm or something. Was that what you
Oh,
just had on your Instagram?
yes.
Is it
So
about
that was
fairies?
from the Fairies of Prince Edward Island episode. So we try to dabble in a little bit of everything because I find, like, of course, my favorite will always be the ghost stories, but so many there's so much lore and legend in Atlantic Canada that we just don't want to leave anything out because even as Evan mentioned, we'll do a few episodes just on like people who like real people who lived in Nova Scotia, but just who lived like these lives that almost like these lives that are so big they take on their own legend almost or become their own legend.
Yeah,
So
like
we try to cover a little bit of everything. And I find it's nice because we have a lot of like friends and people that we've met through the podcast that are interested in Nova Scotia folklore and like like legends, but they don't necessarily love a scary story. So we find those episodes are a way to include a whole bunch of different people.
yeah, like for example, we did an episode recently where we talked about two people who were just giants who were from Nova Scotia. There was Anna Swan and Angus McCaskill, and they were both like almost 8 feet tall and like about 500 pounds, and just kind of the lives that they led, and the just like the stories where it's like, I don't know if this is real or not, but they said that this guy could lift like 2 tons and was doing these circus acts and things like that. And then we do other ones where it's like we talk about cabots that are a cat rabbit hybrid that people claim they see around. And
Oh,
for some reason on our social media, that one's been a controversial one. People are ready to get in arguments in the comments about cabots for some reason.
They are. It's actually, I checked earlier today, the Cabot's video. It's up over 1 million views on TikTok, and I still
my
get
goodness.
likes and comments daily.
Wow.
And I
Isn't
do,
it funny?
yeah, of all the videos that ever thought were going to go viral. We did not think it would be one of Evan talking about these like mythical cat rabbit hybrids, but it gets the people love them so or hate them, and that also gets them talking about them.
Yeah, like we can put out as many things about ghosts or whatever creature, and no one will say a ghost isn't real in our comments. But people will come in droves to tell you that a cabin isn't real. And it's like, okay.
Yep. The number of messages that I've fielded from people who are asking if we understand how DNA works. And I'm like, "We're scientists, people, we do know. This is a folklore podcast, have some fun."
That that is so funny. Yeah, because you wouldn't expect that of all things to cause such a like uproar.
No,
At least I
no.
never would have guessed that.
We thought it would be like a funny just like a funny little mini episode, not this topical debate that's been going on for months now.
Well, those are fun, I guess. Fun when those
They are.
happen. So I guess what do you guys have planned for the future of your podcast? Do you have like a lot of still lots of stories to tell?
We do. Honestly, it's part of the reason we had originally decided to do Atlantic Canada instead of just Nova Scotia was because we were afraid we'd run out of stories just within Nova Scotia. But I feel like every week we're learning of more and more tales. Like I can see us doing this for years to come. Thank you.
Like, because I think I was the same. I was like, oh, we need to kind of cast a wider net here. And then it's like, oh, I'd say the majority of our episodes are still set in Nova Scotia, and then kind of like a couple sprinkled around other provinces. I feel like, if anything, Newfoundland as a secondary, and I think that's just because they just have ones that catch my eye. Like they claim there's a wild baloney that is what the animal that baloney is made from is caught in the wild.
Oh, never heard
Yeah.
that one.
Now, apparently they run very fast, and you catch them by getting them by putting some pepper down, and then it smells the pepper, and it will sneeze, and then it will hit its head on the rock, and that's how you catch them. So, but yeah, like stuff like that, where it's like, okay, well, Newfoundland, you have my interest. You caught my attention with that one. But yeah, we kind of there's still plenty of stories and lots of stuff to talk about from the other places.
Yeah, and it's been cool as well because we have connected with, as Evan mentioned, like there's a great community out this way, and we've connected with other folks who I guess they're more kind of in the paranormal investigation side of things than we ever thought we would be. But for example, today, the first part of a TV series that we were included in was released. So we got
Oh,
invited to
cool.
try to paranormal investigation. And so we're excited to see kind of where the podcast can fit in with more things like that in the future.
Yeah, definitely. That's really cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know I found the same thing with this one in Saskatchewan. And I keep saying Western Canada too, just like you guys are saying Atlantic Canada. But I find I still have so much to talk about in Saskatchewan. That I'm like, well, maybe in like 5 seasons we'll talk about another province, but it's going to be a while.
Absolutely. And it's so cool that you mentioned you're starting a ghost tour.
Yeah, yeah, we're going to try
That's
a
awesome.
ghost tour out for the first time this year to see how it goes. So,
Right? The options are limitless.
very much so, yeah. So, yeah, I know we're going to be running out of time here quick. But did you guys have anything else you kind of want to let the listeners know about anything coming up or where they can find you, anything like that?
Yeah. So if folks are listening and they do live in Nova Scotia or they happen to be visiting on September 14th, we're going to be doing another market appearance at the Uniacke Estate, which is actually one of the properties that Evan shared some of the ghost stories from in one of our recent episodes. So follow us on social media at It Came from the Maritimes, and we'll always be updating about future events and sharing what we consider fun or funny or folklore related stuff. So, yeah. How about you, Evan? Anything you can think of?
No, I think you covered it all well. And you are on the social media a lot more than I am, so I trust you to kind of know things better.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was a blast chatting with you about Atlantic Canada stuff and your podcast.
Thanks
Yes.
for having
Thank you
us.
so much for having us. It was great chatting.
Thank you for listening to ParaGhoul Paranormal. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, then make sure you check out my local YQR Ghost Guide to learn more about the top ghosts and haunted buildings in Regina. Within the free download, you'll learn about who the most famous ghosts of Regina, Saskatchewan are, as well as some of the history behind the most haunted buildings. So head over to my website at kdkulpa.com to get your copy today. And before you go, I just want to say thank you for being here. Every listen, every share, every bit of support helps me take this podcast further. It allows me to interview bigger names in the horror and paranormal world, travel to more haunted places, and create more behind-the-scenes content just for you. So if you haven't already, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. I'll keep doing my part to make this show something special and spooky just for you. So stay tuned for more episodes where we uncover more secrets, unravel more mysteries, and dive deeper into the shadows. This is Katie Culpa, signing off. Until next time, my ghouls.